640, probably 640 at the minimum. At a minimum.
Now your picture's hot. Hey.
Oh, looks like we have some folks coming in.
Watch your step here. You guys will start right there.
Absolutely. Let's see how they're there. Jonathan will
Come on
tell us
in.
if he wants us to go.
Come on in.
Over the wires.
Maybe a 45 a little bit, just so we can squeeze everybody in.
Left over right or right over left? Yeah, I just saw you.
We're not going to be able to sit that there because that's where their notes go, so we're either going to have to move it back.
Can I put it right here?
That's fine.
Okay.
Hello?
Is anyone there?
Standing in front of you?
As long as it's not where they can put notes down if they need them.
Got it.
Okay? Does that work for you?
Yeah.
I want it to tip over in the middle. I see it setting on the fuzz, getting ready to tip.
Test. 1, 2, 3.
That was great. And then anything else?
Right-handed. I'm going to use this map so I can use my hands, right? So am I looking at a camera? Am I looking at a speaker? I'm just giving a typical operation report, right?
Test 1, 2. Test. Test 1, 2. Test. Good? Anybody need anything else? I'm also right on it. If I'm up here, is that a little better? I can do volume down a tiny bit.
Test.
Don't mess with it. Perfect. I won't touch anything.
Yeah, you can move to the side a little bit. If you do 45, this way. There you go. Perfect. Yep. You ready? Yep. Test 1, 2, 3. Good evening. My name is Jonathan Cox, Division Chief and Information Officer with CAL FIRE here on the Kincade incident. This is the 6:30 p.m. press conference for the Kincade Fire here in Sonoma County. Just as we get started, a few things that I ask. One, that all cell phones in the audience here get muted in any conversations you take out of the area. We do have an American Sign Language interpreter to my left. If you could please keep her in your shot for the duration of the press conference, that would be appreciated. Additionally, we will have a Spanish-speaking version with information after the English version. So if you have the need for Spanish, that will be at the conclusion of the English version. With that, just some new numbers for this evening. The fire is now at 23,700 acres. It is still 5% contained. Currently, we have 600 structures that are threatened and still 2,000 people evacuated. We still have 49 structures that have been destroyed, and we are now over 1,300 firefighters out on the line. At 2 o'clock today, 1400 hours, we entered unified command with the Sonoma County Sheriff's Department. And around 16:30 this evening, we had an incident with an incident, or an IWI, occur on the line. That literally is being handled at this moment. Fire activity picked up and additional resources were called in due to some sort of event. We will get more information about that when it is available. We are dealing with the situation, and we'll get the information out for that as soon as we can. There are some rumors out there, but we will clarify them as soon as we get better intel on that. Staying behind me this evening from right to left, we have Supervisor Zane here from Sonoma County. We have Officer Lopez from the California Highway Patrol. From the Sonoma Lake Napa unit, we have Division Chief Nichols and the Unit Chief Shauna Jones. Behind me in the two red hats are two of the incident commanders here from CAL FIRE from IMT 6, and that's Josh Jansen to my right and Chief Vike to my left. We also have the Sheriff Hessick here on my left, as well as Supervisor Rabbit and Chief Ernst, who will give us an operational briefing. Chief?
Good evening. My name is Chief Ernst, Tim Ernst. I'm the Operations Chief for IMT 6. As Chief Cox explained, there was a slight increase in the size of the incident today. The incident is still broken into three large geographic areas. We call those our three branches. The day actually started a little on the slower side as an inversion layer held the smoke down, and that keeps the fire from growing. Unfortunately, as soon as that smoke inversion raises and the heat picks up, the humidity continues to decrease. We normally do see an increase of fire behavior, which we did see today, and we were expecting that behavior change. We did have a slight wind that did come out of the northwest, moving towards what you can see on the map here, sort of the branch 1 area of the fire. You'll notice when we show an updated fire perimeter map that the majority of the fire growth today was on this branch 1 on the east flank of our fire. We don't have the exact perimeter at this time. That is currently being mapped and validated as we speak. The rest of the fire was also extremely active. Firefighters were able to hold it very close to the containment lines, as you'll see when that updated map comes up, around the other branches and the 9 divisions of the fire. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Chief Ernst. I'll now like to introduce from the Sheriff's Department, Sheriff Essick.
Thank you. I have just a few short comments. My name is Mark Essick. I'm the Sheriff of Sonoma County. Currently, our evacuation orders that are in place are remaining, as previously mentioned. I would like to talk about a couple small incidents that have happened with frustration that's building in the community. We know this is a very difficult time to be evacuated from your home, but we've had some aggressive people approaching some of our checkpoints with the California Highway Patrol, along with our sheriff's deputies. We want to reiterate that we need you to be kind to our first responders, be patient with us. We're there to try to help you and keep you safe, keep you out of the evacuated areas. We currently have about 50 deputies patrolling the area of Geyserville and east of Geyserville. Those deputies are there to prevent looting, and we've had no reports of looting at this point. They're also there to help with evacuations, provide direction, and provide support. We have no missing persons reports at this point, and we have no fatalities reported as well. Finally, I want to talk about what you can do to help us over the weekend as we see this historic wind event coming at us. We would like you to stay home. Please stay home unless you're being evacuated. We'd like you to stay off the roads, stay off the highways, so that emergency vehicles can get around. Please be vigilant, stay informed, be in contact with your neighbors, especially those neighbors who are older, elderly, or infirmed. You can take advantage of notifying yourself, keeping yourself informed by following us on Nixle, Twitter, SoCo Alert. Thank you very much for your support. Thank you for your patience. The Sheriff's Office has always been here for you. We will continue to be here for you. But please, we need your patience in these evacuated areas. We're keeping these areas evacuated for your safety and so that our first responders can be in there dealing with this very unpredictable situation. Thank you.
Next, representing the County of Sonoma Board of Supervisors, Supervisor Rabbit.
Thank you very much. My name's David Rabbit, and I'm here with my colleague, Shirley Zane. I am currently chair of the board. As was mentioned, we're so thankful for all the first responders here. It does bring back a lot of memories from just 2 years ago. Even to see this facility loaded with fire engines brings back those memories. Of course, a lot of has been talked about with this wind event over the weekend. We are in a red flag warning. We have a high wind warning for North Bay mountains, valleys, and coastlines. The words used are a little ominous: dangerously strong offshore winds, critically low relative humidity, and the event looks to be potentially historic and even stronger winds than what we saw on October 8th in 2017. Like the sheriff said, it's a good weekend to stay home. It's a good weekend to make sure, or tomorrow, to make sure that you're prepared for any potential power outage that could occur both tomorrow night and for Sunday. So we do ask people to be careful, to look after one another, to be prepared as they go forward. We also want to remind people to watch out for winds throughout their own community, let alone the fires, what they will bring. Tree branches may be downed. We also ask you to please stay away from either immediately getting the chainsaw out to take care of that problem, as you may spark a fire, which will only make things worse. Be safe, and we'll get through the weekend together. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Happy to answer any questions for any of the individuals that are standing up here.
So considering the strong wind events that we're facing this weekend, how is CAL FIRE preparing for this?
Yeah, so CAL FIRE obviously looks at fires regionally and preparation regionally. So we have staffing patterns and additional staffing statewide at the moment. It's that old adage of all hands on deck for an event of this size. And it's not just CAL FIRE that's boosting its resources, but it's local government engines being pre-positioned throughout the state. It's additional aircraft being brought into the state. It's resources from outside of the state also coming in. So this is, although historic, a very strong reaction from the department and from all fire agencies across the state right now to get as in position as best as possible before this wind actually hits. Yeah, so I think, if you look at the past 3 years, all of the large and damaging fires have occurred this time of year during that offshore wind event period, particularly during the red flag warnings. Although we've had minimal fire activity this year, our fuels are now hitting that critical stage. You kind of compound that with the fact that we're potentially going to see a historical wind event, and it has us highly concerned that the vulnerable areas of California could see some explosive fire. So that's why we are reiterating this kind of vigilance that we're preaching to everybody, that 95% of fires in this state are caused by humans. So if we can actually take care of what we're doing in our vehicles, in our activities when we're outside, everything is going to count and help this weekend.
Last night you were talking about how it's a race against the clock for these strong winds even tomorrow. Is it bad news then that we're still only 5% of that number hasn't lost?
Yeah, that's a great question. We would love to have it at 90% containment, but as you can imagine, when 10,000 acres burns in less than 12 hours, the number of miles of fire perimeter that are open on that are overwhelming. And although we have 1,300 firefighters 24 hours a day on the ground and aircraft during the day flying this, the task is monumental. We'd love to see it at 90%, and we are throwing as many resources as we can at it. But we also have to plan for the worst, and we also have to think about this large wind event that is coming.
You mentioned something about an incident on the line. Can you give us a few more details? There have been reports that ambulances were dispatched there, possible injuries. Do you have even basic information?
Yeah, we do know that, after 1630 there was an increased fire behavior up on the incident. Additional resources were summoned, both fire and EMS. That is currently being investigated as to the status and what actually occurred up there. So it's really too early to speculate. We have people at that scene dealing and investigating it. In the interest of not providing misinformation, we will get that as soon as we verify it. We can confirm, though, that there was an incident within an incident. We don't know the scope of what actually happened yet, and when we do, we will release it.
With the potential for low visibility, those high winds tomorrow, how might that impact these aircraft?
Yeah, so our aircraft are a great asset, but they are limited by visibility and wind. Wind can be basically make our retardant ineffective. Basically, you're just dispensing it and it's not doing much. It's also dangerous when you're flying in high winds. Conversely, on the other end of the spectrum is during high inversions, you don't have the visibility to see where we're dropping. So conditions have to be right for our aircraft. What we do have is a number of fixed wing and rotary wing that are at a moment's notice in the sky and over the fire. There's literally an air attack flying overhead at all times, a helicopter below him at all times, and they're calling in coordinated drops with the ground crews wherever those targets of opportunity actually come up when there's clarity. So I know it's easy to assume that we are not using aircraft, but there's someone overhead during all daylight hours who, as soon as there's a target that's viable, they will launch on it, and that will continue until this thing's completely extinguished. So our aircraft are all regional resources, and that includes the large air tankers, the very large air tankers. Our air attack, who I talked about above, can special request large aircraft. So he can make a request to Northern Operations. Northern Operations allocates based on the fire that has the most threat. So if there are multiple fires, it goes to the fire that has the highest threat for structures or lives. But there are a number of large aircraft now in the state available to respond at the request of the air attack. Yeah, so the question was about tactics for the weekend in wind-driven fires. There's a big distinction to make between conditions like this fighting fire and 60-plus mile-an-hour firefighting. And that is, in extreme wind events, firefighting becomes fairly ineffective. You can't fight a fire that's spotting ahead of itself a quarter a mile, half a mile, in some cases a mile ahead of itself. And that's why we keep coming back to evacuations. When we call for evacuations, or if we have to call for evacuations, it's not a suggestion. It is an order that we believe there is an imminent life threat to you and your property. So as we go forward through this wind event, if additional evacuations are called for, it is going to be imperative, 100%, that people heed those and get out early. If we learned anything from the last 3 years, it's that early evacuations saves lives. And that's really what we're preaching this weekend. Yeah, so the question was specific to tactics. For this weekend, we are obviously fighting the fire now. We're also looking at 24, 48 hours out and contingency planning beyond what could happen with the wind on this incident. We will, if conditions turn worse and we get a wind-driven event again, we will prioritize our actions. And that turns simply into life safety of firefighters and the public, engaging targets of opportunity, structures that can be defended, and basically doing as much good and triaging as you can in those areas. That's different than the conditions when there's no wind, where you're putting a dozer on the ground or a hand crew on the ground and actually methodically cutting line. Much different conditions. We react to the conditions, and wind is obviously our least favorable condition to fight fire in. We are getting all those facts right now. We have a team up there who's actually engaged with the incident, within the incident. We will give out more information as that becomes available. I don't want to speculate until we're 100% sure on what is specifically going on, but I will get back to everyone on that. Yeah, so the question is about wind conditions and fire activity. So our fires burn in a number of ways. They can burn because of wind and weather influence, but they can also burn because of topographical conditions. And what we saw today was a topography-driven fire. Essentially what that means is it's burning in some steep terrain. And when it burns in steep terrain, it preheats itself up that mountain, and fire activity increases. It's kind of classic fire behavior that as the day gets warmer, the inversion lifts, that fire pulls up, and it tends to actually increase the fire spread uphill. So today, and what we're seeing on the kind of eastern perimeter is a topographically driven fire. That's completely opposite to what we saw on the first night, where it was a downhill wind-driven fire. So we're looking at kind of two different conditions from the beginning to now. All right, everyone up here will be available for one-on-one interviews after this. I would ask anybody who's interested in a Spanish-speaking version to stay right here, and we will have that provided for everybody. I appreciate everybody's time, and thank you.